As a guitar player for about 20 years and now a guitar teacher for about 5 years, one of the most common questions that I get asked on a daily basis is how to memorize the entire fretboard and how to have fretboard mastery, or how to map out the fretboard, or fretboard visualization, whatever you want to call it. It's one of the most common things that I get asked on a daily basis, whether it's beginners, intermediates, or even advanced people who just want some new ideas. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to break down what I think is the absolute best #1 method for getting the entire fretboard down in every single key in the fastest way possible. This is one of the most important videos that you're ever going to get out of me, so keep watching. I know that everybody wants to become a shred god. Everybody wants to be able to play fast. Everybody wants to be able to play melodic. Everybody wants to be able to sound really, really good. And one of the roadblocks that usually stops people from getting that point is practicing and having a really good practice routine that they can maintain for the rest of their lives. That's really important. And when we talk about a practice routine, it can get really, really overwhelming because there's so many things that we have to work on. For example, like we have to work on our technique, like our pick slanting, our sweep picking, our tapping, economy picking, whatever it is that you got to practice, we have to practice our technique every single day. Then there's other stuff like music theory. We got to make sure we know music theory really, really well. These are all things that I'll address here. But if we have all these things that we're juggling on top of learning songs, on top of writing songs, on top of improvising, how are we going to get the entire fretboard down? Well, this method is going to clear all that up, and it's actually going to space things out in a way where it'll actually get it done a lot faster than the old ways. The old ways, for example, things like the cage system, things like opening up one of your old guitar books like the Guitar Grimoire and memorizing 50 different scales in every single key and not actually knowing what to do with them. And then a month goes by, you get burnt out, and then you end up forgetting half the crap that you actually wanted to learn. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of those old methods, they have some good things in there. And there's some things that I'm bringing in from every single method that I've learned over the years into what I have kind of, I guess, pioneered or created. It's definitely nothing new. It's just something that I've constructed into like a fancy, organized practice routine. It'll make sense when I show you in a second. But what I'm saying is that when most beginner and intermediate guitarists, they go about trying to get the fretboard down, or fretboard mastery, or fretboard memorization, 9 times out of 10, they never get there. So clearly something is not working, right? Usually that has to do with information overload, where we are memorizing way too many scales, we are memorizing way too many arpeggios, and we end up overdoing it with all those things, and we never actually get anything done. It's like you try to look for a solution, but you end up creating a new problem because you didn't come to the root of the problem, if that kind of makes sense. So I'm going to clear all that stuff up today, and it's going to make a lot of sense. So this method does take 1 full year. And first of all, if you are in fear of the fact that that takes way too much time, there's a couple of things that I need to address about that. #1, guitar is a lifelong journey. So if you feel like one small little year out of the 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years that you're going to be playing guitar is a lot to do, then you may as well just stay in the same spot, or you may as well quit guitar, because the rest of your journey is going to be really, really miserable because you're not going to get very much better. Okay? But if you are willing to actually put the time and invest it into yourself, this is one of the best time investments that you can actually make as a guitar player. Now, point #2, even though it is 12 months, okay, I'll explain why that is in a moment. It's actually a lot easier once you get through the first 3 months. Everything kind of starts to click and make sense, and you can actually go through these things even faster. 12 months is a general rule that I follow, and I push on my students a ton, and it's been helping them a ton. But if you adjust it to where you do maybe some of the harder keys for 6 weeks and then some of the easier keys for 3 weeks, that is totally okay too. I'll explain what I mean by the keys in just a moment. But like I said, this is the best time investment by far because it's condensing a ton of information down into just 1 year of your guitar playing life. And if you do stick with it like my other students have, it's going to help a lot, okay? Now, obviously, there are some prerequisites that we do need to go over to make sure that you have before we get into the 12 key method. So like I mentioned earlier, we still need to practice our technique, okay? So things like pick slanting, things like sweep picking, things like tapping, all those things are things that you absolutely need to do every single day in your practice routine. Whether you are extremely busy and you only have 20 minutes a day to practice, or you have all the time in the world and you have 6 hours a day to practice, it doesn't matter. You have to practice your technique every single day. In fact, that's usually the first thing that I practice, and I keep practicing it throughout the day Okay, so make sure you do not skip on your technique. If you're already getting overwhelmed here with all the stuff that I'm talking about, to be honest with you, the best way is to just work with me directly. So book a call below. We can maybe find a spot with you when working with me on a one-on-one basis, or in my masterclass, which is specifically for guitar players who want to be able to shred. And we literally talk about everything from the techniques that we're talking about right now, to the music theory, to the fretboard knowledge, to the composing, the songwriting, the improvising. Everything is in there. So if that's something that you want to do, go ahead and then keep watching this video. Now, the other prerequisite, which is kind of the elephant in the room that I keep mentioning, is the music theory. Okay, so when it comes to music theory, I'm going to require you to at least have a music theory level 1 background. So that pretty much covers everything from the beginning, like the musical alphabet, the sharps and flats, through the circle of fifths, and then the triads, and then seventh chords are fine, but you don't necessarily need them for this method, but it is good to know them. Okay, so as long as you know up to the triads and through the triads, most of this stuff should make sense. The last little bit that I want you to throw in with that music theory, though, is tension and release, tonic and dominant, things like that, diminished. Really, really important. If you don't know this stuff yet, I have some really good videos, so go to the link in the description. There's tons of videos on the channel about all those music theory concepts. I'll put them in there, so go watch those first, do your homework, and then come back here. Okay, so now that we have all the prerequisites, and you know that in your practice routine, you're going to divide it up to where you do some technique, okay? You do a little bit of theory, you do some improv, you do all that stuff. You figure out a good, solid routine that you can stick with for the rest of your life, okay, based on your schedule. If you need more help with that, like I said, get in contact with me. I build practice routines for people all the time. It's not a problem, okay? So from here, we're going to go over the 12 key method, okay? It's going to make a lot of sense as long as you have a background on all this stuff, okay? And if there's anything that you don't understand, just leave a comment. I'll respond to you. Look in the description for some extra resources. Let's get into it. Okay, so the 12 key method is exactly how it sounds. So if you're familiar with the circle of fifths, this should make a lot of sense to you. So there's 12 notes in music in total, right? There's no sharp or flat between B and C and E and F. And when you look on the circle of fifths, you should visualize it like a clock, okay? So if that's kind of understood, I want you to think of it like there are 12 keys. Now, here's the best part about this method is, technically speaking, when you look at the circle of fifths, there's 24 keys if we're including the minor keys or the relative minor keys. But this one, we're combining the two together. So that way each month, you're going to practice working with C major, A minor, then G major in E minor, right? Then D major in B minor, and so on and so forth. So every single month, you're essentially going to be working in just one key for the entirety of the month, and then the next month you're going to move on to the next key. The beauty of this is once you do a few keys, it's going to start making sense, and a snowball effect is going to start happening where everything is just going to start making sense. Let me explain. So a little while back, I made a video about scales and the cage system, on why I think the cage system is trash. I still believe that the cage system is not very good, especially for beginner intermediate guitar players. Now, before you get all upset about that, what I want you to do is, if you haven't already, go watch that video, because it explains a much better way of learning how to play scales, okay? So this is step one. You're going to know how to play 2 pentatonic scales, the minor and the major pentatonic scales, and then you're going to know how to play the full major scale and the full minor scale on a 3-note per string basis, okay? The last scale I'm going to add in there is harmonic minor, okay? In the same way, okay? So if you know all 5 of those scales, you're going to know those vertically, horizontally, and up 12 frets, okay? This is, again, in that video. Please go watch it. It's in the description below, okay? Essentially, if you know how to do this, if you know how to play those 5 scales in 3 different ways, you already have 15 different ways of getting across the fretboard. So that in of itself unlocks the fretboard far better than most other methods do, okay? This is not something that I created. This is Paul Gilbert's talked about this plenty of times, okay? But when you understand that, that already takes care of a huge chunk of the pie, okay? So we already have the scales down, and that's really, really good. I want you to practice those, and I want you to work on any exercise that you have, just transpose them so that way you're in that key. If you're working on improvising, stay in that key. Obviously, life is actually a thing where sometimes you got to learn songs that are outside of the key. Obviously, I'm not saying you have to change that, and I'm not saying that you have to write songs in just that key for a month, but I'm saying that in terms of your actual practicing, like your technique, like your music theory, all that good stuff, and especially your improvising, super important that you do that. just work in the one key for the month, okay? We don't need you to overwhelm yourself with juggling all these different keys, then you never get anything done, okay? While you're going through your keys, I want you to mostly have the minor chords. One more tip here when it comes to going through these keys, I want you to think more along the sides of your in a minor key rather than a major key for more reasons that have to do with the arpeggios. So when you're in the key of C major / A minor, focus more on A minor, but use C major, of course, 100% as your relative key. Okay, it's going to make a lot more sense when you check out the next section, which has to do with these arpeggios that I'm talking about with tonic and dominant and all that stuff. But when you go through these, make sure you're starting with minor and then you're using relative major as your passing, right? As your extra thing, okay? It'll just help you and it'll clear everything up. Once you get the grasp of everything with this theory, you can switch back and forth between the two. It'll make sense. Assuming that you have those scales down, you know them vertically, horizontally, and up 12 frets, okay? You're already halfway there and you know a huge chunk of the fretboard in one key. So if we take January, for example, in the key of C major, which, by the way, you can start this whenever you want. If you start it here in July, you'd be in C major, right, / A minor. Then, August, you would end up going to G major, E minor, etc., etc. And then by the time next year happens around July, you'll be done, okay? So if this is understood, you should be able to use those scales and start working with them and getting really, really comfortable with them. That also means that you can start working with morphing the scales together and noodling back and forth between the scales. Okay, this is something I have my students do all the time and it's really, really fun. So enjoy doing it. It's going to be a really good time. Now, the second step is probably going to be the harder step, and it's going to be the most crucial step, which is the arpeggios. Now, I know this video is filled with a lot of ranting and complaining, but you don't know how many times I hear students coming to me or just people who need some quick tips on things. And they say, Aiden, I've been looking at videos like music theory for guitar players or guitar music theory and things like that. And I'm not really understanding how everything works. And the problem is literally what you're looking at. Because when you look at videos like that are just for guitar, you're going to be doing a lot of things on the fretboard and you're not going to be doing enough things off the fretboard for your brain. So you're not going to fully process everything. It's important to do both. Okay. So I'm your guy that's going to help you do it the other way here. Okay. So when it comes to the arpeggio stuff, like I said earlier, you need to really understand tonic and dominant. Okay. So obviously, as we know, there are 7 notes in a scale, which means that there are 7 chords in a scale. Now, I want you to think about the harmonic minor scale as we talk about this, because what we're going to be using is we're going to be using the harmonic minor scale for our tension and release chords. So 3 arpeggios is what we're going to do. So we're going to do the tonic minor, we're going to do the dominant major, and then we're going to do the diminished arpeggio. Luckily for you, you actually only have to memorize 3 minor arpeggios, 3 major arpeggios, and then 1 diminished arpeggio that you just move anywhere across the fretboard, and that's it. And luckily for you, I've made a video that breaks down these exact arpeggios all across the fretboard in any key using a really easy method of memorization. Okay, so go ahead. If you don't know those already, again, you know the drill. Pause this right here, go click on the video, and then come back to this and finish this off. So when it comes to arpeggios, the biggest problem that I see is people think that they should start by memorizing every single arpeggio of every single position. Now, that sounds really good in theory, but the biggest problem is, again, is people don't understand how to actually put it into use and how to practically use things. So that's why I'm so stern on people not doing any predominant chords and only doing the tonic, the dominant, and then the diminished chords. So a release chord and then 2 tension chords. Because when you do this in every single key, you're going to understand really, really well how to use, how to use those tension and release chords really, really well. Okay. You need to understand that when it comes to music, everything that I'm talking about right now with tension and release, that is almost all of music. Everything stems from music. So if you're following with me here, it's going to be really, really awesome, because what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to sweep pick through your tonic minor chords. Okay, so for when you go through these keys, I want you to mainly stay with minor and then use relative major when it's appropriate, and then obviously go through your dominant major chords, okay, which is the 5 major chord when you use harmonic minor. You're also going to throw in diminished in there, which I have again, same thing with your homework. I have a diminished masterclass video. You have to go watch that. It's really, really good for you too, okay? But I'm trying to putting everything together into this video today. So in total, you're really going to have this. You're going to have 5 different scales, okay? And you're going to know them 3 different ways each, okay? Vertical, horizontal, and up 12 frets. Then you're going to know 3 minor, tonic, 3 major / dominant, okay? Which, yes, you can also use the major on the tonic major. So if you're in C major, you can use it on C major, okay? So, and then the last thing that you really need to know is the diminished. And some people might argue and tell me, well, Aiden, that's not enough. I need more. I need the modes. I need the predominant chords. I'm like, knock yourself out. All these methods that I'm talking about now, if you want to add things to it, like start using the modes of the major scale or the modes of harmonic minor, or you want to start doing the predominant chords or half diminished or augmented or whatever you want to do, you can incorporate that into your playing. However, again, information overload is what kills guitarists nowadays, in my opinion. It really does. I've seen it countless times here. And when you take things and you put it into a really small and reduced structure that people can use throughout their entire year of their practice routine, it really does make a big difference, and it clears up everything. Because it would be one thing for me just to give you a bunch of exercises and then not have you use them. But if you actually understand how everything works with the music theory and with the tension and the release and with how these relative keys connect to each other, it's going to make a lot of sense and it's going to make things a lot better. So I hope this video helps. Please definitely give it a try. Go through all the 12 keys, and I'll see you in the next video.